Welcome everyone to my podcast. Today I have Justin Rigney on here with Canine Services Unlimited. So tell us a little bit about your story and how you got into dogs.
Well, it's an interesting story. The whole thing happened by accident. God put it on my heart as a very young kid to be obsessed, to know, learn, and understand animals. And actually, horses were my first love. And believe it or not, I wanted to be a jockey back then. So,
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
yeah, I discovered food, and that dream was crushed, and became too big and fat to get on the back of a horse. So, my story with dogs isn't so much a fairy tale. I'm very, transparent about my upbringing. I grew up in violence and substance abuse and dysfunction, and was a violent alcoholic. And I knew at a very young age that people were dangerous to me, and they had ulterior motives. And, animals were speaking my love language, man. And I just gravitated to animals. Their agenda was clear. There was none of that ulterior motive, and there was some manipulation for sure. And they're master manipulators, but it was a language that I could grab. And very, very thankful for the upbringing that I had. I'm not crying victim whatsoever. It was a difficult time as a kid, but it prepared me for this fallen world for sure, especially as a cop in South Florida. Another thing too is like you can piece things together in your life, that events that happen, and kind of put you on the path that you are on now. And when I was about 13, we had adopted a big 100-pound all black German Shepherd. He'd gotten hit by a car. A vet did the work for free and then put him up for adoption. So super happy dog. He was really cool, outgoing. Like I said, 100 pounds. He was a beast. He actually had a peg leg. His front left leg was stiff. So we hopped around. Nobody wanted him. So we saw him. We grabbed him. And he was awesome. He was on autopilot for like 2 weeks. Like he'd grown up with us. He was probably 3 or 4 when we got him. And he was just an amazing dog. He just clicked, and he was like family. And then one morning, like it was probably 2 or 3 in the morning, he starts going ballistic, trying to go through the front door. Like he had never demonstrated that behavior before. We thought maybe it was a raccoon or some shit outside, and we're like, just hushed him up and went back to bed. Well, the next morning, we discovered that my father had 2 outboard motors on his boat were stolen. So for me in that moment, 2 things kind of happened. Number one, becoming a victim of a crime, like, enraged me. Even as a kid, it fucking made me pissed. Like I wanted to go hunt them down and find them. I was out there looking for tracks in the gravel. We had a gravel driveway in the grass where the boat was. Like I was pissed. But the other thing that clicked in my brain, it told me I will never not listen to a dog again. Like they're telling us their story. If we just have the openness and the awareness to listen to them and understand what direction they're trying to put us in. So, fast forward the tape, man, my experience at dog training it's gone on over 31, 32 years. I've been saying 30 years for a few years. So I think it's probably 30 something years. I'm pretty shitty at math, but I played professional baseball once upon a time, and being on the road, I could never have a dog. So that was always a void. And then I got released, and I went back to Connecticut, where I'm from, started working in construction during the day, going to school at night. And I would always stop in these little delis and see a business card. We had no social media back then. So it was like guerrilla marketing is what we used to call business cards. There's a guy named Chris Byrne, who's a dear friend of mine today. I just saw him a couple weeks ago in Connecticut. He's just the dearest friend to me. He became my early mentor. So I looked him up. He actually was having an intern or apprenticeship. And so I just started laboring kennel work. I was working in the kennel. He had some construction projects going on. So I just traded my back for his mind, which he opened to me transparently and completely. He opened his mind, his heart, his business, his family. He treated me like he was my own, like I was his own. It was just an amazing experience. In that time, I was just blessed to have that. And I always have that mindset now of paying it forward. I put everything I got out there for free. I could spend all day on DMs trying to answer people. I try to get back to folks as much as I can because it's in me. It's intrinsic. It's not like it's calculated, but it's that early experience where people were very giving to me in the beginning. And I didn't have to fuck around and learn dumb shit and then realize years later that it was bad. And that we're talking about the early 90s in the New England region. I'm talking about IGP, Schutzen, whatever they call it these days. It was a powerhouse. My early experience with dogs, first gig I really ever had was running a guard dog service for Chris. We had nasty dogs, shepherds, rotties that we drop off in a car lot or a construction site. Drop the dog off when the business closed, be there early before they opened. And I got to really learn how to manage those dogs, serious dogs. But I was also cleaning kennels, learning kennel management, kennel maintenance. I was doing puppy classes and obedience, and they threw me in the suit and the sleeve, and I was really hooked. I was a little bit of an athlete back then, so the competition and the athleticism of being a decoy was a natural gravitation for me, and that's where it all clicked. Like that was my niche into the game, and because I was an athlete and I could kind of mimic some skills and start to learn that people opened doors for me. So that first club was the Connecticut Working Dog Association. It was an IGP club up near Danbury, Connecticut. And then the training director for that club was also a cop. And he was the training director for the Connecticut Police Work Dog Association. So he's like, hey, meet me out here on a Wednesday night. Threw me in the suit, started decoying for multiple agencies, doing certifications for Napawata back then. And I was absolutely hooked. And that was my thing. And now I saw what these dogs could do in the real world, again, with my early experience of, becoming a victim of a crime. And my vehicle had been burglarized before and as a kid. So that was for me. So hearing the war stories, the pursuits, the bailouts and the dog bites, I'm like, that's for me. I need that shit in my life. Right. So another guy named Phil Holter, who's like the godfather of Schutzhund in this country. A lot of folks may not know him if they're brand new to the game, but he has been there, done that. He established that game in this country. There was others, but he's one of the main players. Well, he used to come to Connecticut twice a year to put on a clinic, and I was okay with a sleeve back then. And he's like, come to South Florida. I got opportunities for you. And I did. I jumped on it. There was a gal in his club that had a room to rent. She let me set up kennels. Phil gave me protection dog gigs. He gave me pet training. And it was his club, the South Florida Schutzhund Club down in Miami in the Redlands, was a powerhouse, man, cranking out national helpers, putting up big numbers, taking home hardware. So the early experience was amazing. And then, I actually had tried to apply to become a cop in Connecticut, but you had like 200 or 300 applicants going for 1 or 2 jobs. There was no movement. It was the opposite in Florida. They couldn't find enough people. So I applied for like 6 agencies. The number one agency I wanted was the Davie Police Department. I got that. It was an amazing opportunity. The first dog that I got to use in Canine there was from my breeding program. It was a dog named Vader. I saw him take his very first breath in life. And, 12 years later, I saw him take his last in my arms. And, between those 2 breaths, watching that dog evolve and grow up and become a very strong dog was like winning the World Series for me. Amazing thing to experience and witness. And if you're not a dog geek, you'll never get it. But for me, it's just, I get choked up even thinking about it now, like the early experience. So spent a few years at Davie and then moved up to Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office in West Palm Beach, Florida, where I worked 2 other dogs. My second dog was Bosco, all black German Shepherd from Metro Dade Canine Services, Tony Guzman, a legend in the police canine game. So the whole time I'm still doing sport dogs, working in the club, doing canine stuff, becoming a cop and living that dream. And Bosco was a very special dog. He, if you see him in a suit, he'd be like, cool dog, he's okay, wouldn't blow your mind. But on the road, like what this dog put together and the things that the people he found was an amazing experience. He probably, I stopped counting, but I would imagine he had upwards of 70, maybe 80 street bites in his career. But he's one of those dogs that I could hand to my daughters and they could take him to show and tell. He was very social, very stable. But he dealt with some really bad people. I had a guy trying to kill him by drowning him on a bite and, a lot of chaotic things that we had to deal with. But his ability to track was incredible. He blew my mind about how he was able to find people in the places that he did. And down in South Florida, it's just an absolute wasteland. The cops are the enemy. Criminals run wild and do whatever they want. So it was it's a horrible place to raise children, but it was a damn fun place to work a police dog because
It was like that down there.
it is. Yeah, we've been handcuffed and haven't been able to do our jobs for a long, long time. So in the early days we could, and it was an amazing time. Like I was in the academy when the first plane hit the tower, 9/11.
Wow.
Yeah, we never want to go back to 9/11 again, but bring me back to a time when it was like 9/12, like the day after, like people really respected law enforcement, needed it. And that lasted until about 2008, and that shit changed. But long story short, it was that black dog was I'm his biggest fan, and he's buried right behind me here in Tennessee. He made it to about 12 years as well, and just a great experience. And my last dog, Zeke, he's still here with us, and I made a post recently about living and dealing with a dangerous dog. And he was, I was involved with his life at 10 weeks. My good friends imported him from Germany at 10 weeks old. And I was involved with the puppy training, bite development stuff. And they owned a couple of businesses, got very busy. So I bought him when he was about 7 months old. And I loved his nose. And even at that age, I could see like my kids were in his crosshairs. Like he was an asshole, angry dog as a puppy. And that began to manifest, and he was an incredible dog. So I got to see his life evolve too, and I was involved with a shooting with him on the road, suicide by cop call. A guy charged me with a knife, and I had the dog in one hand, and just my life flashed before me, and I had to spray and pray, and hopefully I hit the guy. And it was dark. The guy had a big 14-inch knife, and I could see like when I discharged the gun, and that dog is bouncing right in front of it. I put 8 rounds right between his ears, and he never blinked, never wavered. The guy hit the ground, got back up, hit the ground again. I have no idea if I hit him, but I knew that he had dropped the knife. So I holstered my gun. I told the guy to stop resisting, let me see his hands. And he was still moving around on the ground. Again, it was super dark. There was some ambient light, and I knew that he had separated from the knife. So my intention was to deploy the dog and do is like staple him on his shoulder and drag him away from where I thought the knife was. There was a little short hedge in between us, maybe like thigh high on me. The dog jumped over the hedge, and the guy was wearing like a windbreaker, kind of like a nylon material. So the dog hit the ground. He skipped off the windbreaker, and both his canines went from temple to temple. He got the guy right across the face. And I saw the guy had like a momentary kind of like a half a little sit up, and then he died. The guy died right there, and I had to pull the dog off him, and the team came in to secure him and found the knife right where I thought it was. And it was a tragic loss of life. There's a whole story behind that, and it was horrible. But from a dog side, dog perspective, it was for that dog to do what he did in that moment. It's a wild experience, from a behavior side. I'm not diminishing the tragic loss of life in any capacity. My actions were righteous. It was very clean. I ended up getting sued on it. As usual, you get sued for everything, especially in South Florida. But for the dog to be there in that moment and not to waver, and his foundation was on scared cops as a decoy. Like he worked on a couple talented people a few times, and that was like when he was a year old. So it was his genetics, the cream rose to the top. So he didn't have a whole lot of time on talented people, just cops throwing in a suit, doing what I asked him to do, and the dog thrives. All those factors in play I tell the story a lot too. Like I'm not a gun guy by any means. And as a cop, I've been in a shooting. I've had I'm okay shot when I need to be, but like going to training, going to the range was just annoying to me. It was boring as shit. I used to miss paper. It was just like snooze, like here we go again. But I was obsessed with visualizing, and it's a technique. Visualization is a technique I learned from baseball. Visioning, like the fastball coming at you. How am I going to adjust my bat speed and my body position, my hands, my wrists, my feet? Like aligning all those muscle memory and all those mechanics and ranges of motion. Sitting there visualizing it without actually being in the moment. Like you can train your body to move. Well, I used that same obsession to visualize scenarios. Like I saw this incident, this shooting in my mind's eye 1,000 times before it happened, and my body went on complete autopilot. So, once the dog got off, we had to park like shit, man, like a quarter of a mile away to make a tactical approach. Like I'm walking the dog back to the car to put him in the car, and I'm like, what the fuck just happened to me? Like it was wild. It was wild how your body takes over. So I talk about visualization and dog training a lot, man, about learning mechanics, especially decoying. How to learn mechanics of any range of motion, any exercise. So I was big on that. And, I retired about 6 years ago, and moved up to Tennessee, and loving life here, man. We're just doing pet training. I have 3 trainers that work for us, and I travel a lot, teaching law enforcement, some military units, and a lot of pet owners and sport competitors. And it happened by accident. It really happened by accident. I didn't plan to do any of this, and, we live okay, and I've never been about money, but I'm about my passion and been able to just monetize it and sustain life.
So you still have the dog? What was his name?
Zeke.
Zeke?
Yep.
So you still have him right now?
Yeah, he's 12 years old. He's still running around. Is he
difficult for you to handle, or he's always been fine with you?
He's always been cool. Like I got in his way a few times on the road. He's always been fair with me. I'm not a big shepherd line person, but he comes from like mink croc. Like he's known for high levels of aggression, handler aggression too, that bloodline. But he's always been cool with me. Like there was one time I was tracking a burglar, and he had hid in a little tiny shed. It was maybe like 8 foot by 10 foot, a little tiny kind of shed. And the way odor travels, we call it chimney effect. Like the guy was tucked into the left corner, but his odor was rolling up that wall, hitting the ceiling and rolling down the opposite wall. So the dog's climbing a blank wall and trying to get through. There was some shit in the shed that he's trying to get. He's like basically like trying to bite the wall. Well, I see the guy at the corner of my eye. I start fighting with him. He turns around. He fucking nuked me on the fucking forearm. But he spit me out real quickly and realized I didn't taste like bad guy. And he handled the job, You got me a couple times. I was doing a vehicle extraction. I post a video a lot. You don't quite see him bite me, but I pull a guy out of a vehicle, but the guy initially had slammed the car door. I opened the car door and told him to get out, and he slammed the door in my face. And my dog was going fucking ballistic. So I reached across my dog's head to open the door again, and he fucking saw my hand peripherally and fucking got me on the forearm again. But he spit me out quickly. And there was another time, like on a felony stop, where that was redirected shit. Like he was bubbling over, and he had to take a piece, and we handled that in a moment. But the post that I made a while back was about dealing with an aggressive dog like that, and I'll never do it again because it is legit a full-time fucking job.
Yeah.
He was actually my wife's dog. Like
Oh wow.
it melted for my wife. Melted. Like that was her dog. I rented him to go to work, right? Which was a good thing. I was in a couple bad car wrecks on duty with him. One of the canine car was the cage in the back of the car was bent.
Oh wow.
A drunk had hit me doing like 65 miles an hour. I was at a dead stop. And there was another one where I got a lady with fucking, I was turning into an intersection. She had her headlights off at night. I never saw her. She fucking crushed me. And they had to ask her to come get the dog out of the fucking car because he's a pain in the ass to deal with. He's a dangerous dog, and there's only two people that can really get their hands on him. And it's me and my wife. So it's a pain in the ass finding the right boarding facility to put him at when you have to go away, or having qualified people come deal with him. It's a fucking full-time job, man. He's just one of those dogs that he's hardwired to fight. And he had 13 bites before I retired, or got booted out of canine, filed a lawsuit and all that shit. That's a whole nother boring story. But he was starting to, his wires were arcing in his head, and he was starting to short circuit. Like I was going to have a lot of fucking problems with him because the more people he bit, just the more fucking savage he became. And it took him about 2 years once I retired to de-escalate, like to really fucking settle down. It's for folks that haven't, maybe worked a dog like that, or even, worked a police dog, where dogs get, they start biting people in the real world and get habituated in that life. It's an amazing evolution. It's like growth hormone for their drives, their temperament, their power. It's like their food drive goes up, their toy drive goes up. Of course, the aggression goes up. And it's wild to see it, but he was starting to fucking bubble over, man. Like, and he was pushing 100 pounds. He was 95 pounds and very, very strong dog. And, between decoying for 30 years, sports injuries, bad car wrecks, like my neck, my back, I'm not fucking rolling with a dog like that, So it was actually well timed for him. And now he's cool as shit. Like he's easy to deal with me and my wife, but other people, it's a little bit of a problem.
Yeah. I mean, dogs like that, they come with the territory. I have a few PPDs and drug dogs, but one of my dogs is pretty human aggressive, so I know what you mean. Not anyone can just reach over and help me take care of him.
You're not getting on the Nextdoor app looking for a pet sitter.
Yeah.
That shit ain't happening.
No Rover for me. Why is it important to use training tools for both working dogs and pet dogs?
Balance is the key. I'm just in this block mode now. Like anybody comes on my shit and does something stupid. Like
You were so funny. Your response to me.
The slightest like emotionally charged triggered comment just gets you blocked. I talk shit, I'll block you, screenshot it, and then post it, but that's the end of it. But there's been times where you try to make sense of these people, and it's a money grab. It really is a money grab. There's a deeper agenda to it. It's not about the dogs. I mean, for some people that are like ignorant to the fact, but pressure is mystical for a dog, and it's absolutely like the secret sauce for an evolution and maturity of an animal. Just like me, like give me time to fuck around and procrastinate. Like I will drop shit, fail shit, like but put pressure on me, I will do my best work. And these dogs a lot of times, like if they don't experience the pressure of life, and I just back up, like I made a post years ago about name one creature, organism, being, anything that is on this planet that doesn't live without pressure, deprivation, loss, discomfort. Like name one fucking thing. And somebody said a jellyfish. I'm like, fuck. Like they got me. Like no. I'm like no. Those motherfuckers sting shit. Like they sting shit. There's conflict in that fight or defending themselves. Like so, no. So and who are we to to rewrite God's script? Like God hardwired a dog to understand clearly how to shut off pressure. And as a dominant species in this planet, it's our role and responsibility to communicate that to a dog in a language that they get. And it has to be fair. It has to be balanced. It has to be well timed for the animal to process it. Anything can become abusive, but when you do not put pressure on a dog to do things, especially when it comes to nerve shit, Like you are robbing that creature of some peace in its life. Like it's crazy. It's crazy to see. Like I got a friend of mine's coming out to help train and helping her train her dog, and the dude's a nervous Mal, right? And a lot of times we've tried to like use like dopamine box stuff to get him through some environmental stressors, and I'm like, you know what? Today we're gonna add some low E pressure for you checking out and being a fucking weirdo, and we have it on video. He like typical squirrel shit, head up, like what's gonna kill me? Tap 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 on the E, dives back into behavior, gets flooded with food, and now he is on point. We're working on a target pointing indication process for detection or tracking, and it was such a miracle for this dog to just put a little bit of pressure in his life to make him understand, like, you don't have to be scared of the unknown. Like, whatever you think's going to murder you out there, it's not.
Yeah.
Pay attention, stay on task. And it gave the dog like this sanctuary. It's wild. And I come from Nipopo, and there's so many dimensions of that system, but one of my favorite applications of the system is a preparation for pressure. And I think that's where people go wrong, or there's a void. Like we call it popo knee instead of knee popo. Like they're flooding with food. I'm going to fade my lure so quickly, and then I'm going to put pressure on the dog, and they flatten out. Like you have to like strategically and specifically prepare these dogs for pressure with the tools. And I make all my tools as for my working dogs. I make my prong collar a go 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 signal. I make my e collar a gas pedal, long before it breaks. And this is how we're gonna defeat and combat the force-free fakes. It's like they're after our tools, right? And it's science-based. I'm no scientist, but I believe in the science.
Yeah.
Is that we can classically condition the feeling or the emotional response, or the hormonal response of endorphins, right? So if I have a dog by a flat collar and I throw their favorite toy out in front of them, and I'm using opposition reflex where they're just dying to go get that toy, and if I tap that e-collar on a very low level and release them, there's a spike in those endorphins to go grab that toy. I'm linking that tactile signal to that hormonal secretion, and we can classically condition that vibe, that feeling, to the collar. Yeah. And they'll never admit it. But we talk about marker training and classically conditioned things. Like people think we're marking positions, we're marking heeling, or marking sit, marking down, marking the out. But you're marking everything that's being processed in that animal's entire being. It's what he sees, smells, hears, feels, everything. The blood that's going through his veins, the hormones that are being secreted, like those things are being marked as well. And when you understand that concept, it's crazy. Like my last dog, Zeke, I was telling you about, like the dude, for whatever reason, had huge dopamine response when I asked him to heel. I could heel for 3 miles and never pay that dog. Right? So when I told him to heel, he would absolutely vibrate. So that word, I would tell him foot, which was whatever the fuck language that is, and he would just come to life and vibrate. Like he became like this other creature when he was doing it, because that word meant that feeling. Well, you can classically condition all of our senses: sight, sound, smell, taste, and touch. So with a tactile signal of an e-collar, we can condition that an endorphin response. So that's how the force-free fakes, they're never going to be able to argue that scientific position. But what it also is doing is preparing the dog for the tools. So we're not going to live at low levels. We're going to prepare the dog for the day that the hand of God does strike. And it could be a behavior that's going to save the dog's life. Yeah. A recall running across a busy street, or consuming something that's going to kill the dog. I'm the first person in line to put life-saving pressure on a dog. I am not scared to do that. I'm very transparent. I will be the first person to stand up and put pressure on an animal to save its life. And for me, they talk about being abusive tools. Well, a dog hooked to a gentle leader for its entire life is fucking abusive.
It drives me nuts.
It's insane. So for me, it's crucial. And, the preparation for the pressure, same with prong, everything. And we do have that time with our working dogs, but we don't quite have that time with our pet dogs. Where I do kind of put my process into play is that, a lot of times you get pretty cool pet dogs. Like they know where the training room is. They know what happens in there. Like they're dragging you to get in there. Like a lot of times they won't even potty, but they're pulling you to the training room. Well, that's where I'll put the collar on and start doing a little giddy up. Even if we're like doing very basic things, like I'm going to put the e-collar on their neck as they're busting through that door, so they link the presence of the equipment with good feelings. And then maybe I'll tap and throw a piece of kibble, tap, throw a piece of kibble, and like really going to get them in the flow of that and a little bit of endorphin response. But we get those dogs in a board and train. It's never going to happen. It's never going to look Facebook famous.
Yeah.
We're not going to post these dogs. They look like they would literally fucking jump off a bridge if you let them. So they're not. It's an unfortunate part about it. So very necessary. Tools are life-saving for the dog. Anything, the flip-flops I'm wearing right now can be abusive. So it's in the hands of the beholder. Like I'll absolutely give them the pros and cons and be very transparent about the tool. If I see very early on they're not hearing it, I'll just kindly tell them I'm not the trainer for you and wish them a nice day. Like, but that's been my go-to very quickly. I'm not going to try and, if they're not willing to use the tools, and if it gets a little ugly, I'll say, well, when you go to the mechanic, do you tell them what tools to use on your car? And when you go to the doctor, do you tell them like what medicine and what procedures to use on you when you go to the doctor? Like, you are calling me because you don't know what you're doing. And now you're telling me what I should and shouldn't be doing. Thanks, but no.
Oh, gee, that's a good one.
They're emotional vampires. And I when I first left law enforcement, I left that steady paycheck and I was doing some shit. I would eat shit. Like, I would take shit and listen to shit and, it's like blood money sometimes. But then after a while, like, nah.
What is your favorite breed to own for, I guess, just a personal dog? And then what's your favorite breed to train?
I got Frenchies, man. We got a whole bunch of these little aliens running around. And
how many do you have?
We have 4.
Oh my gosh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, we were up to 6 at one point. Yeah.
So what's your favorite breed to train then?
I have a lab. I'm having a lot of fun with her. She's hunting line. She got a lot of gas, a lot of horsepower. She got her quirks. Like, there's certain like motors, like a groomer's dryer or like a leaf blower will make her put on the brakes a little bit. But I'm having a lot of fun with her as far as doing detection and tracking. I posted a lot of her foundation tracking, and she's got insatiable hunt drive, and I love her. And I don't have to take my eyes off her. I can cut her loose in a crowd and not give a shit. Like, she's take anywhere. Happy dog, loves everything, and likes to go swimming. I've done my hunting of humans with dogs, and I've done that the aggression side, which I still enjoy quite a bit, but I like a dog that I can just chill with and not give a fuck where she goes and who she sees and not worry about them getting tagged. But she's a lot of fun. She is. I'm not just. I do Nino's MVP shit. I don't know if you're into that at all.
What is it?
STS, like Nino DeWart. Yeah, so I bought that shit like on a Thanksgiving Day sale, and they have assignments. Like, there's a bunch of assignments. I haven't done the first one because my training's so fractured with my travel. But so I'm doing that. I jumped in it. It's a cool system. It complements Nipopo really, really well. It's very, very detailed skills, and it's like I feel like I have 2 left feet again, doing some shit, which I like because I like being frustrated. I like to struggle and learn new shit. And she's a cool candidate for it. She's an absolute foodie. She's an athlete. She's crazy for the balls. When I do eventually connect those dots with her, she'll be fun for that. But, I get the question too, like, what's my favorite police dog? Shepherd, Mal, Dutchie? Like, I don't have one. Like, I have a specific criteria. Yeah. And then I don't care what it is. I got stripes, what it does or it doesn't. I will say some of the crosses I've had my hands on. I mentioned Tony Guzman earlier. Mm-hmm. The crosses that they're producing are, as a whole, you can't generalize too much, but they have the horsepower of a top Malinois with the brain of an amazing shepherd. So they're just, and they have like a lot of them have a shut off switch and they're livable. Like, but they're fucking 19,000 for green dogs. So yeah, that's South Florida prices, but it's some pre-training that as well. But it's they're elite dog that I've had my hands on, and so the mixes I'm down with for sure. And I'm, when it comes to BRNs and all this shit, bro, like, BRN stands for bullshit registration number. Like, if anybody's into that shit, I'm not. Like, I know some buzzwords with lines and shit. And again, there's people out there doing incredible work. Don't get me wrong. I'm just talking shit, but like Duco 2, bro, very, very famous fucking dog and a lot of blood. If anybody thinks like a BRN's real, Google that motherfucker. He is a fucking molliser. He looks like a gigantic fucking bull herder. Tell me he's a Malinois. Okay. So, but anyway, man, I like all dogs, man. I like dogs, like, and what produces our content, these little fluff balls, man. I get little Yorkies doing heads up healing and shit, like, and that's kind of the balance for me, man, is, the police background, like, with your husband and stuff too. It's like, it does establish a trust for some percentage of the population, others it doesn't, but it does bring in a little bit of credibility to your background. But my wife's always telling me like, hey, you gotta post some fluff. Like there's too many teeth and ears and, and bite shit. And but yeah,
you have a lot of experience, you're really knowledgeable, but maybe you go to a seminar and even if there's one or two things that you learned that you didn't think of previously, like you still learned something. So at the time when I went to your seminar in California, that's how I felt. I just felt so static. I was doing a lot of pet dog training. And I just really had this desire to expand my knowledge. It definitely scratched that itch for me. So that was really fun. And I was just doing it wrong too, because I remember you were talking about using it before feeding. I got I couldn't afford the chameleon, so I got the extender from eColor Tech,
yeah,
and I'm using it with my shepherd. He was pretty young at the time too. I'm using it with him. He's actually wearing it right now, and I'm like using it while he's eating. And I wouldn't call him really a sensitive dog, but I just think the chameleon was a little bit too much for him. So then he's like not eating anymore. I'm like, fuck this. Like I don't know what I'm doing, but I obviously fucked it up. So I just never did it again. But now I
yeah,
understand it a lot better.
yeah.
Um at this
I mean, to your point, I just think, as long as you're not held hostage by your own ego and insecurity, like this game is an infinite learning curve.
Yeah.
You'll never get there. And I have ADD like a motherfucker. Like I will check if shit gets normalized and predictable, I check out. And it's never been that for me. There's always some new shit. Like, and that's why I dove into Nino's shit because like, not only he's doing mystical shit and I want to steal that wizardry
Yeah.
and apply it to my toolbox. But it's cool to, again, like that struggle, that frustration. And that's why it's for me, like I'm very fortunate to travel the country and coast to coast and teach. And I love teaching. It's a passion of mine. I was a miserable student. I have a documented learning disability. I can't read for shit. Math is worse. And here I am teaching, which is weird. But I'm very much a student. I'm a perpetual student. And when I do teach, and especially in small groups, I go around the room and have folks introduce themselves, like get that communication flow going. And when the folks come and start working their dogs, that's where I'm stealing shit. Like Shane Murray came to a class I did in Prescott, Arizona. Shit, I just posted a clip of some part of that seminar today, and he was talking about how I think he did in foundation healing, and I'm like, fuck, I'm stealing that shit, like because I have an ulterior motive about what I'm doing. I put people on the spot sometimes in a seminar because I like their work and I want to fucking know how they got there. And it's very, very intriguing to me. I'm addicted to this shit. I'm obsessed. My wife would absolutely tell you it's not healthy. But I'm a huge, huge fan of the game and the process. And I know that failure and struggle is a huge, huge necessity to get better.
What are your favorite behaviors?
There's so much. I have to say, if I had to make a choice right now, it would probably be tracking or detection. Like the nose of the dog is fascinating to me. And again, I've looking at my background and how I got into this game, it was all bite shit, decoying, bite, bite, bite. My body can't do a lot of it anymore. And plus, doing it in the real world and seeing that side and like having stimulation overload with that shit. Like, not that I've been there and done that with it. There's nobody that has that, but I think now in this part of my life, like I'm really fascinated by the nose of the dog. So teaching detection, teaching tracking, watching the dog connect the dots that way is really amazing to me. But the aggression always holds a place in my heart, man. And this is it's a really long-winded story. I don't want to eat up the whole day, but cops have changed big time. And the dogs have changed as well. I tell the stories a lot. Like when I started this game 30 years ago, 30 plus years, the dogs were fucking monsters that you couldn't break. Like they were mutants, right? And if you could go to KMPV trial field in Holland, put down $2,500 on a 2.5-year-old dog. If you can get that fucker in the crate, on the plane, off the plane, out of the crate, into your kennel without getting fucking murdered, that's box check number one. And as cops back then, like if our own dog didn't bite us, we thought it was a bitch and didn't want it. Like the different mentality. We're fucking idiot cavemen. You could put a shitty e-collar brick, giant Tritronics brick around his neck, try to blast him through your shitty cert. And if you lived through that and didn't get murdered, the dogs had plenty of horsepower to hunt and eat on the streets. I mean, and again, that dog was 2.5, 3 years old sometimes. Like they were beasts. You could not break these dogs. And these are the dogs that I learned on. And I feel like I'm very blessed to have that experience. I talked about 9/11 earlier, but that changed the world, but it also changed the dog world. So what happened back then is that there were a million grants. There was tons of money to bolster canine units especially for explosive detection. and patrol for the anti-terrorism stuff. So what happened was every breeder and vendor got in the game. The first like metric, first shift was the age of the dogs. Now these vendors are telling you the dog's 14, 16 months old. There's no fucking way. He's maybe 9 or 10. Pearly white teeth, still has a bristly puppy coat. Like, if you're still putting that shitty old school ground and pound training techniques on these dogs, it's over. Like, you're going to break these dogs. Like, the genetics are there. The blood is there. They have to be prepared for pressure, like the conversation we had. They need more time to mature to evolve into the dogs that we need, right? The other flip side of this, and I say this all the time, and I'm very transparent about this, is the girls, the gals make way better dog trainers than men. You're kicking art, and it's not just on the leash. There's girls doing shit in the suit, like big shit, like very, very impressive. I just taught a class from Massachusetts State Police, and I introduced the bark fence to them. There's a girl there, fucking killed it. Fucking smoked the dudes. These dudes are tripping over themselves. I'm having to repeat myself 100 fucking. She just put it in fucking motion. So the other flip to that, though, is, and there's plenty of fucking women that can handle an aggressive dog. Please don't twist my words. I know that for sure. And where I really fell in love with my wife is when I saw her handle our 1,200-pound unruly fucking quarter horse, where she striped that motherfucker up and down the barn when he got too pushy with her. So, oh, my queen, like, fell in love with her right there. Trust me, there's girls that can put the pressure on. But as a whole, a lot of the gals don't like the dogs hanging from them like we used to do back in the day, right? So what's happened with the breeding is that they've made this because women getting in dog sport has kicking the dude's ass, but also has changed the dogs a little bit too. Like, they're very fucking user friendly. They're actually a little bit handler sensitive. So that's changed the way the dogs have been, coming into law enforcement. And then as I travel the country coast to coast, there's fucking canine units with vacancies. Like, these kids don't want to do this shit, right? Like, it's crazy. It's a lot of fucking, I say this a lot, man. Like, I travel in these airports and I'm watching these fucking beta males all over the place. Like, we're fucking doomed, right? We are fucking doomed. So that's in law enforcement. Like, it's crazy evolution. So the dogs are softer, the cops are softer. So I feel like it's more of a necessity to teach the aggression aspect, like to really understand it. I call it the trifecta of aggression. And this would take a whole nother podcast to explain it, but it basically is teaching that the drive channeling, the active aggression, the power and control aspect of the bark fence, the shit we've been putting out there. It's my boogeyman system that teaches the dog to activate with forward aggression and very weird, insecure fucking pictures, because a patrol dog's entire world, entire experience and career is in the unknown. Like, you can't generalize a police dog because every fucking time they get out of the car, it's some new shit. Yeah. The boogeyman teaches them that the answer is forward aggression. Then, of course, the power biting system, which is the bodybuilding MMA aspect of really teaching these dogs to get their genetic potential with the biting mechanics that they do. And so that's, again, the aggression's still a big piece of me in what I do, because there's such a massive void in the aggression work. And you're hearing me babble about it all the time. It's fucking prey barking. Like, people reinforcing prey barking. It's making these dogs scatterbrains. So it's a whole long conversation.
That's a really interesting take. I'd never even considered that more women entering working dog stuff or dog sport would, the long-term impacts of that and the impacts of the dogs that are coming out onto the street too.
It's for the better. It really is for the better in so many ways, but you have to, that's why I love Nipopo. Like, I came from that ground and pound era where you couldn't break a dog. And then I've had to evolve as a human being, but also as a dog trainer, and go with the flow of the world and the dog world. And we can produce better products, but it's crazy, man. It's in Tennessee where I live now. There's no state standard for canine. You can literally go to the fucking pound and check a dog out and go nuke somebody.
Really?
And then you can bring him back because I don't like his ears. Check and we get a new dog. There's traveling so much. There's places that have a 4-week green to machine patrol dog class. Like, I can't train a fucking pet in 4 weeks.
California has, it seems like, I was just talking to Ricky. You know who Ricky is, right? Ricky.
Oh, yeah. Huge fan. Fan.
I was just talking to Ricky, and he was telling me kind of what they do for their canine program and the state mandates for canine units in his area. Or I guess it would be, obviously the whole state of California. But I thought it was super interesting. And then I just did another episode with, his name is Thomas Walker. He was in the Air Force, and now he does police dogs too. And they have something really similar. So it's definitely interesting to hear how different states handle their canine units and their rules and regulations. Yeah, like even New Jersey, I mean, Jersey's just, I don't know if you've been around these streets, but
Oh shit, yes. Yeah, I'm very fortunate. I've taught in Jersey many times, and they've been fucking handcuffed. Big time. Big time.
the Jersey canine units kind of suck. My husband wants to get on canine because I don't know what it was like for you. Did you have to wait a few years, or were there just vacancies pretty much right off the bat once you started the once you got the job at your department?
Well, back then, we're talking about in the early 2000s, like nobody left. Like you either had to get killed or retire. And I was very fortunate with the Davie Police Department where I started my career to get in very soon after probation. It just was, the timing was right. It took me 3 years in Palm Beach County to get into canine. So it was no movement.
Yeah.
But now it's like, I had a buddy of mine down at an agency in South Florida was in his car driving away. He dog bit 2 people in one night. It was like left the hospital on his way, was on a cell phone with another handler just talking about how proud he was of the dog and dropping F-bombs and some other expletives and boop, kicked out. Bye.
What?
Because of what it could look like later if they pull the tape. Like,
yeah,
fuck that job. I do not miss that fucking job. Like, again, I feel like I dodged a bullet. I got some really wild fucking stories to tell. And I feel like I did dodge a bullet. I don't miss that shit. There's no job to go back to. People ask me all the time, do you miss it? I go, fuck no. Fuck no. Because down in South Florida, there's plenty of handlers back in the day for sure that would retire their dogs with 100+ bites. Oh. We saw the shit down there. And so now
Florida should be its own country. I feel like Florida is just like the craziest shit happens there. Like anything you see a crazy video online, you're just like, oh, that's probably in Florida.
My wife's a 25-year veteran cop, and she always watches the crime drama shows. Like I don't watch a whole lot of TV, but I'll pass through the living room and be like, oh, what part of Florida is that?
Like, you just tell by like the by what's always going on.
It's insane.
Okay, so let's see. So someone asked, if you could only teach one foundational tenet of dog training, what would it be and why?
I think probably goes back to that preparation for pressure. Is again preparing the dogs for the tools. And I think the e-collar is the greatest tool, greatest gift God gave to dog trainers and owners. And I think if we understand how to implement that tool the right way as a communication device, and of course the hand of God can strike with an electronic kung fu karate chop to save a dog's life with aversive control. It's very necessary. So that, people don't go anywhere without their smartphones. Like that's a smartphone around the dog's neck if you know how to use the tool. And I don't sugarcoat shit. Like there's time the dog's gonna experience some life-saving pressure. It's gonna happen. If I had to take one aspect, one tool or one dimension, it would be the e-collar for sure.
What'd you say? My husband said, that's my man. So someone said, just a comment that how can you train badass dogs and then own lap dogs, smiley face. So I guess they're referring to your Frenchies.
Yeah. It's, we go on vacation, like, we're going to be away from the dogs. Like, it's also weird coming from South Florida. This happens to me all the fucking time. Like, I know I have no fucking dog with me, but I'm fucking paranoid that I left a dog in a car in the heat. Like, but even when we go on vacation, we'll be a day or two into it, and we're like, fuck, we missed the dogs, like, just not having a dog. Like, yeah. Like, we had to interrupt this. We were supposed to do this a day ago because one of my little Frenchie Buns, like, she had a little mass pop up, and they had to take it off of her. So it's I love the little dogs, man. They're fucking hilarious. They're easygoing. They don't even know their fucking names. They say the shoemaker's kids got the worst shoes. Like that's fucking true in my house. So our dogs don't know shit.
Someone wanted to know information on Napopo's.
So it's silver and gold. So what silver is, it can only be taught by Bart and his wife Michael. Okay. To me, it's the best dog training education on the planet, and there's other great systems out there. But as far as like Bart is one of my mentors, and he's the most brilliant dog trainer on the planet, in my opinion. What silver is 3 days. It's all theory. There's no dogs. It's pen and paper. You learning the system A to Z. There's practice tests every day. The last day of class, there's 100-question tests. They got to get 90 or better on it. They don't give that shit away. And people are cramming on study groups at night, and they're hustling to try to really dive into this information and commit it to that short-term memory where you get pen on paper. And then once you pass the silver, then you go on to a gold, which is all hands-on with dogs. Who bring a dog, sometimes I'm called a gold multiplicator. So what that simply means is I'm a gold student, OG, like back in the day when they first started. The system changed a little over a year ago. And now because it used to be silver and gold can only be done by Bart and Michael, but now gold multiplicators like me can teach gold.
Awesome.
So Bart and Michael only doing silver. Now the multiplicators are doing gold, which is all hands on. And it can be in any dimension of dog training. So when people talk shit about the system, like I got some messages yesterday about, like, it's grown so much. I don't know half the people that are in the system anymore. But talking shit about people don't know what they're doing, blah, blah, blah. Like, cool, but it's not a cookie cutter system. It's your own interpretation of the system. Like, you are the architect and own designer of your training protocols. And there's, of course, just foundational things about the system we must apply, but it goes in many different dimensions. Like, people can come to me for pet stuff, for tracking, detection, bite work, some sport work, and obedience. And I've never fucked around with dock diving or seeing eye dogs, but there's a lot of things I can offer. And some people are just niche, like pet training, and some people are doing special force stuff. And it's a very, very amazing community to be in. I think it's the best education. And gold is 5 days. So it's 5 days, all hands on with the instructor. There's lecture and there's discussions within the groups, but it's really applying the system with your dog, or if the multiplicator provides a dog for you, and then diving into the system. And again, every multiplicator's got their own little vibe, and that's what's cool about it. Like, it's golden corral of Nipopo, where you can just go and figure out what multiplicator's doing what and kind of dive into their system. Well, Silver right now it's in person, which is in Springfield, Missouri, at the largest Bass Pro Shop in the world. It's a beautiful convention center where they have it. It's 3 meals a day that are like 5-star meals. It's amazing setup. But it's going live online any day, and I don't know when. I think it's a big, massive technical push. It's gonna be a slow rollout, from what I understand. They're not gonna open up to the entire world, so they can handle the process. And I think it's gonna really open the floodgates for the multiplicators. Like, a lot more silver students want to become gold, and very cool experience.
This is another question. What age do you typically introduce e-collar?
About 4 months. But it's not in the way you would think. Like, the very first step that I do is I make the dogs addicted to the equipment without ever pushing buttons. Like, just like the pet dog owner, they walk to the front door to grab the leash to take the dog for a walk. The dog sees that leash, and as the owner's making the approach to grab it, they're spinning and barking. Like, the dopamine spike from that moment of that piece of equipment, the feeling and emotion that it elicits in most pet dogs is like fucking euphoric. Or I do the same shit for the e-collar. I want the e-collar to mean the same thing to the dog.
Yeah.
So there's ways to do that. Like, any predictable event, like going for a leash walk, or going to do food-based obedience, or going to go play ball. When the dog has that predictable, like, excitability to do that event, the e-collar goes on. I'm talking about, it just gets strapped on and we go play it. There's no pushing buttons. Yeah. So that presence of the equipment becomes linked to those good feelings. You want the dog to love the gear. Second step is I charge electronic stim just like a clicker. Put it on a very low level. Most products are 1 or maybe a 2. I tap, throw the food. Tap, throw the ball. Tap, do restrain, recall. When I want those endorphins high, very excited, especially if the dog likes to bite things or chase a ball, I'll throw that ball out in the yard, hold them back by a flat collar so the opposition reflex is in play, and just tap the dog on a low level and then let them go. So again, we're linking those endorphins to that tactile signal. And then the third step for me is dog training 101, is just applying low-level e-collar stim, continuous, with behaviors that the dog knows and hopefully loves very, very well. It's learned behavior. I'm attaching that tactile feeling of stimulation to the behavior the dog knows very, very well. So there's my e-collar class is 2 or 3 days sometimes, but in a nutshell, that's the process that I'm using. And if I'm in a law enforcement military kind of environment, I'm doing a lot of pushing behaviors first. Push to place, directional work, push to a laser pointer where I want the dog out away. It's a signal from the dog, and modern e-collar training is a signal that means do better. Go, go, go. Push in that direction. Go over there. Ignore that decoy in a suit shooting an AK-47. I want you to go sniff that car for explosive. Pushing the dogs into target behavior is the big part of the system of Nepopo, and also the gas pedal aspect, and as well as preparing the dog for the pressure. Those are big things, big things that I implement as much as I can. There's one little competition cheat that I give folks. It's a 50-50 deal. Of course, there's nothing going to work on every single dog, but we know that the dog perceives the entire world through their nose first. It's their primary sense that they utilize. So if we connect the dog's nose to being under stimulus control, I think it's a good thing. Quite simply, if we attach like an essential oil, put a very distinct odor on the collar, that every time the dog wears the collar, it goes over their head, it goes around their neck. They're linking that piece of equipment to that scent, right?
Yeah.
So let's say you're using birch oil. Like, there's no judge on earth that will point you for showing up and reporting in smelling like a hippie. So you just dab a little bit of that same scent on the dog's neck, and maybe they're linking that scent's there. It's available. Of course, there's other ways that to condition dogs to have collars that clip on, clip off, and those kind of things. So
sorry, have a little guess really quick. Someone asked, what are some of your biggest success stories with dogs with severe behavioral issues?
You know, I don't think it's anything like mind blowing. I think it's the day-to-day person that's living in dysfunction with their dog. The dog's neurotic. The dog's unhappy. They're unhappy. They don't know how to live cohesively with their animal. They've been robbed of the entire experience why they got a dog in the first place. And I think when we can bring the dog into the program, and you know, you're not rewiring DNA, but I think with the system that we use, we can teach the dog that these behaviors that have worked for you to get out of issues or have brought you attention and become to manifest and snowball in the home, we can get that stuff back into balance where we can create harmony in the home with the average dog. I'm not the average dog, but bring that kind of balance back into the home to make people's lives more peaceful and harmonious in the pack. Like, that's a big win. Like, I've had, you know, people like in tears, like the fact that they're living with like dogs with extreme issues that are going on, and the fact that they're now can live and cohabitate in some type of peace. Like, that's a grand slam. You know, hunting these bad guys and being all that shit is cool too. But when you can really, and it's about the dog too, man. Like, the dogs are not happy living in these dysfunctional environments. I tell a story all the time. We had a couple that came to us, and they would not do a board and train, right? So what they would do, they decided to do a one-on-one lesson, or actually come for an evaluation. They get the dog out of the car. It basically looks like a coyote on a catch stick. It's super nervy, like shepherd kind of mix. All teeth, all tail, like tail hackles, and dog was just fucking so uncomfortable. The evaluation went on for like an hour. Like, it was the longest evaluation in history. Like, I really gave them I didn't charge them, but I gave them their money's worth.
Yeah.
Long story short, they decided to leave the dog with us for board and train. They walked out to the parking lot, got in their car. I walked the dog down a little walkway at my old facility, got him onto the training field. He realized they were gone, and this dog was just a different. You could see him just relax and be a normal fucking dog. The greatest gift you can give a dog is to treat them like a dog in their mother language, right? And what we found out later when we did the go home, they were fucking hoarders. They were like living in absolute chaos and fucking mess and dysfunction. So when it's about the dog, like, you can really, really change dogs' lives. Like, that's, you know, what it's about. Because dogs have changed my life 100% in many, many like miraculous ways. If we can give that back, that's huge. That's huge.
And it's stories like that when someone texts you and has this breakthrough moment with their dog, or they were doing X, Y, and Z, and then post board and train, they're not doing this anymore. And again, people could just start living more harmoniously. I don't know why that word was so hard, with their dogs. And it just makes it all worth it. And it makes all the long nights of training, the stressful training sessions that aren't super fun. It just makes it all worth it. So I appreciate you coming on. Yeah, I mean, I love hearing you teach and talk. Like I told you already, I went to your seminar before, and it was really informative. I know that everyone will appreciate and value any insight that you have. You're obviously very knowledgeable with all these things, and yeah, it was nice talking to you.
I'm grateful for the opportunity. It's fun to be able to chat with other people, dog minds, and I love to teach. I love to talk dogs.
Thank you, everyone, for joining my podcast, and we hope you have a good day.